Question now is that Part 3 debates on clauses 49 to 60 and including the Schedules 1 and 2 stand part. I call the Honourable Member Dr David Clark.
Mr Chair, this part refers to the standards and provisions relating to auditor qualifications and access to information. I'm sure members of the House will have looked at this part of the bill very closely and will be debating the finer points. I'm interested to see if anyone from the other side takes a call or the Minister gets up. They haven't so far. They're a bit quiet on regulations that are designed to reduce compliance. They don't quite know what to say. It's a new experience for them, I suspect. Especially for John Banks. But the interesting thing about this one is when we specify the qualifications of the auditor, as we see in this number 35, qualifications of the auditor, must be a chartered accountant and so on, must be a member of this organisation, the notice must be put in the Gazette, must be eligible to act as an auditor in this country, state or territory outside New Zealand, and so on and so forth. All of these rules and regulations, must be a fellow of this or that institution. It means nothing at the end of the day if no one listens to them. Now, in this bill, it is expected that businesses will comply, but the government's own record on this stuff would send a very different message. And we think of some of the examples of that. We think of the recent EQC report, which found huge failures. The Auditor General found disastrous process there, and I won't rehearse all of the terrible things that were found in that process, but the government dismissed it immediately. And so we see a government that is above, that says it's above any kind of auditing, any kind of review of its work, that arrogantly carries on as before. We think of this Law Society advice on the GCSB bill, damning of the process. Why would you pass such an important piece of legislation under urgency? Why would you not have a process in place to review decisions? All of these things, basic fundamental democratic processes that were obviated or not complied with by the government, and the government arrogantly said, well, they won't agree with them, they don't listen to them, they're talking a load of nonsense. This is the behaviour of a government that says there's got to be a standard for businesses, there's got to be a standard for citizens, but it's not for them. They're on their own level, they are out of touch, they are arrogant, and New Zealanders are getting sick of it. The other example that springs to mind is the Crown Retail Deposit Guarantee Scheme. If we think back to that one, this government may have lost New Zealand taxpayers $500 million. It could be up to $500 million, Mr Little, that was lost in the Crown Retail Deposit Guarantee Scheme as a result of a failure, an absolute and abysmal failure to monitor that process. The Minister of Finance did not ask to have regular updates. Basically signed a blank cheque. I mean, the scheme itself was a sensible scheme. It was put in with the right intentions in the nick of time to stop a run on the banks. And that was a very, very sensible thing to do. But thereafter, when the national government took over, they did not monitor the scheme, and the liability grew. One of the deposit takers had their balance sheet increased tenfold, risky loans, left, right and centre, but the Crown was guaranteeing them. It's no wonder that people were piling money into it, but that was at the expense of the New Zealand taxpayer. Then we had South Canterbury Finance. Everyone remembers that one. Their loan book blossomed, it bloomed with all this dodgy debt, and again, there was a failure of monitoring. The Minister of Finance had his head firmly in the sand, didn't ask for reports. The Treasury didn't ask for reports they could have got from the Reserve Bank to tell them how much that scheme was costing the New Zealand taxpayer over time. And they failed to put measures in place to stop those dodgy loan books growing. But that is a government that has failed to monitor. And then what happened next, if we remember back, what happened next was the Auditor General. Again, the Auditor General, the same one that wrote the EQC report that said failure of process. And what did this national government do? Just as with the EQC report, they said, it doesn't matter. We don't care. We're just going to carry on. We won't read it. That's John Key's favourite line when he gets the police report on John Banks' conduct. Won't read the report. This is the kind of arrogance. Everyone else must comply. Everyone else must be audited, and the auditing must be accurate and precise, and it must be done to these standards and those standards. But when it comes to their own conduct, they're dismissive, completely dismissive of the Auditor-General. And in the case of the Crown Retail Deposit Guarantee Scheme, there are a whole lot of anomalies there. 500 million of taxpayer money probably lost unnecessarily by this government, but they would not hold an independent inquiry into that. They would not go further.
The question is that the Minister's amendments to Part 3 set out on SOP number 376 be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that Part 3, as amended, stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that Part 4 stand part. Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Chairman, I want to put a